Welcome to the Barrister's Backlog Gamers. My name is Justin, the creator and voice behind this channel. I'm an attorney by day and a gamer by night who's simply trying to tackle his immense backlog one game at a time. Whether it's a hidden gem, an underappreciated classic, hyped up dud, or one of the latest releases, I'll be playing and reviewing it here for you all to watch and follow along. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can stay up to date on my uploads. But with that out of the way, let's get started by reviewing the first game on this channel, Shadow of the Colossus. If you've never heard of this classic, Shadow of the Colossus is an action-adventure game developed by Japan Studio and Team Ico. The game was directed by Fumito Ueda and developed at Sony Computer Entertainment's International Production Studio 1. You may know it better as Team Ico. They're the same development team responsible for the critically acclaimed PS2 title, Ico, to which Shadow of the Colossus is considered a spiritual successor but not a direct sequel. Cited as an influential title in the video game industry and one of the best video games ever made, Shadow of the Colossus is often regarded as an important example of video games as art, due to its minimalist landscape designs, immersive gameplay, and emotional weight of the player's character's journey. It's received wide critical acclaim by the media and a lot of fans. The game has won several awards for its audio, game design, and overall quality, and a high-definition remastered version for the PS4 developed by Bluepoint Games was released in 2018, which is the focus of this video. As someone completely detached from the nostalgia of the original release of Shadow of the Colossus may evoke in many, I can understand after playing it how it would have blown players away during its initial release on the PS2. In 2024, however, even with the quality of life improvements, control screen changes, and graphical upscaling that the 2018 remake provides, Shadow of the Colossus is really beginning to show its age. After playing through the entire main story and taking a look at the game holistically, I don't believe it stands the test of time, and it's been overrated and overhyped by the nostalgia-tinted glasses of many. This is not to say the game is bad, but I just don't think it deserves its place as one of the greatest games of all time. Let me explain why. From the start, Shadow of the Colossus looks to be an open-world adventure game. You have a horse for easy travel across a map that looks rich with ancient ruins and areas to explore. This is unfortunately not really the case, though. The game in reality is more or less a boss rush, the player using their horse for a little more than traveling from one Colossi battle to the next, with little to no detours to be had. Granted, the game is by definition an open world in the most basic sense of the word, i.e. each environment in the game is linked together seamlessly without loading screens and are all immediately available to the player at the start of the game. This is where it ends. The lack of any real reason to explore makes this open world less than interesting. There are of course glowing trinkets to collect scattered sparingly around the game world, lizards to shoot and pick up for increased stamina, and fruit to find and eat for increased health, but nothing else of note. I don't consider these tasks to be meaningful side content whatsoever, and the prospect of finding them never compelled me to venture anywhere besides directly to the next Colossi battle. Whether this is my problem or the game's is up to you to decide. While this review is for the 2018 remaster of the game, it's important to note that open worlds, the likes of which is present in Shadow of the Colossus, was bare bones even during its initial 2005 release on the PS2. By 2005, amazing open world games like Jak and Daxter: The Precursor Legacy, Jack 2, its direct sequel, Grand Theft Auto Vice City and San Andreas, and Yakuza's 1 and 2 had all been released on the console. All of these games, while of course having flaws of their own, which are not the subject of this video, had an interesting and rich open world that were full of things to do and side content to keep the player engaged. Obviously understand the in-game and artistic reasoning behind the empty landscapes of Shadow of the Colossus, but it just doesn't sit well with me that there's so little to do in such a beautiful and realized world. Besides the open world, I also had an assortment of issues with the controls and camera angles used for the game. The control scheme itself is fine. You fire your bow with L1 and using square to attack is second nature in any video game nowadays. But the movement of the player character, and especially the horse, is immensely clunky. I can't say if this is reminiscent of the controls present in the PS2 release of the game, since I never played that version, or was a conscious choice made by Bluepoint while remaking it, but the controls are passable at best and unwieldy, cumbersome, and aggravating at worst. The control of the horse is especially worth mentioning here, as it's hard to steer and incredibly slow unless you repeatedly mash and then hold down the triangle button. There are times when I want to abandon the horse altogether and simply travel on foot, but the immense distance and scale you have to travel in this game mandates you use the horse or you spend several minutes traversing the empty expanse of the game world, leaving you to realize just how dead of an experience this game is unless you're tackling the Colossi. The camera, on the other hand, feels like something Bluepoint could have absolutely remedied in the PS4 version, but decided to stay true to the atrocious camera work of the original. It's never truly behind the player, repeatedly gets stuck on rocks and trees, and zooms in and out to an absurd degree at the worst times. To say it's the cause of several drops to near death throughout my playthrough would be an understatement. As a PS2 game, this camera work would have been fine and forgivable, but for a game released in 2018, it's unacceptable and something I can't look beyond. Despite these complaints, Shadow of the Colossus is at its absolute best when you're taking on each of the colossi found in the game. The puzzle that each encounter presents that must be overcome to take down the behemoths is always engaging and will require some genuine riddle solving on the part of the player. There's a sort of David versus Goliath scenario to each encounter. It's both exciting and terrifying, no matter how many of these titans you topple, as you realize how incredibly small you are in comparison to the lumbering, flying, or swimming colossi in the game. Just take a look at this comparison of the models for the player character and the colossi. You can quickly understand how minuscule the player character is when compared to the towering monsters that must be defeated throughout a playthrough. Speaking of the colossi, there are a total of 16 in the game. Individually, 14 of these designs I believe are breathtaking and amazing, but there's two colossi that might as well be carbon copies of each other. They're basically armored covered quadrupeds reminiscent of a lion or a large dog. Regardless of which colossi designs I like or dislike, though, the ability of the game developers to seamlessly merge these organic materials like hair and scales with the inorganic stone and metal is incredible, and it's something I have not seen replicated in any other game, to be honest. Overall, Shadow of the Colossus was undoubtedly groundbreaking in 2005, and obviously had an impact on game development going forward, but it's nowhere near a perfect game, and is quite mediocre by today's standards, in my opinion. It's unfortunate that the 2018 remake failed to really upgrade the data mechanics, clunky controls, and bad camera work of the original, leaving us with a graphically beautiful but mechanically underwhelming game that I believe many hold on a pedestal based on nostalgia alone and not its actual merits. With that said, thanks for watching this first video on the Bearstreet Backlog. If you like what you saw, consider subscribing, hitting the notification bell so you can keep up to date with my uploads. If you have critiques or want to tell me how wrong my opinion is on this game, which I'm sure many of you do, drop a comment and I'll be sure to respond. Until next time, gamers.